recording.
Well, hello everybody. And it's a great shame that I can't see you, but perhaps next time.
Well, you can see us, right? We can't
Yes,
see you.
Yes, I can see Elena, and I can see Dima, and Julia, and Irina. Yes, and there are others too. Oh, yes, there are. I can see Mark and Catalina.
That is my daughter, who's Ekaterina, actually, yes, but yeah.
And Grisha? Yeah,
Grisha, yes.
And, I can put my glasses on. I didn't, yes. And Eduard. There's an Eduard. And Elisaveta. Well, welcome. So Elena has told me that you'd liked me to talk for a little while about my life and perhaps how I come to be in Russia, which of course is very unusual. Yes, no doubt about that. Some of my former colleagues, when they retired, they went to live in Spain, and some went to live in France, and I even know a couple, that's two. I know two that went to live in the USA. But as far as I know, I'm the only one that's living in Russia. But let's start at the beginning. Okay. I should perhaps tell you my age. Yes, I'll tell you my age, because that will put everything in context, in sequence. So I am 66. I shall be 67 this year, which of course, to your reasoning, makes me a very old man, but I don't feel it. I'm full of vigor and energy. And that's part of my hobby, and perhaps we'll talk about that later on. So, I was born in a city called Southampton, which is on the south coast of England, on the very south coast. It's a very big port. At that time, it was one of the most important ports in all of Britain, with cargo from all around the world, and also, which was most interesting to see, with great big passenger liners. Yeah, great big ocean liners that would sail from Southampton across to America and back, with tourists. And one or two of my friends' fathers worked on these ocean liners, and they sometimes would bring back little presents, sweets and little toys from America. And most precious of all were American comics, things like Batman and Superman, which of course now we all take for granted, but back then they were highly prized, because the superheroes were new to us, and these comics were in color. At the time, all our comics in Britain were just black and white. We didn't have color comics. They came a little later on. So I have one sister, and she is 3 years younger than me. And my father was a truck driver, and my mother had various jobs when I was a boy, including working in a cinema. And when my father was late, driving his truck and couldn't get home, I would have to go to the cinema with my mother. So sometimes I would watch the same film 3 times in a week. Sometimes that was good. Sometimes it wasn't very good. Yes, sometimes this would have been the 1960s, and some of the films were, how would you say, cheesy, very cheesy, with Elvis Presley and things like that. Oh yes, they were terrible. But what was nice was the projectionist would take me up to the projection room and show me how the film was projected onto the screen. That was very exciting for a boy of my age. So who likes cinema? Who likes cinema? Yes? Yeah, everybody likes cinema. But not now. I don't watch many films. When I was last in Britain, which was in January, I went to the cinema. That was the first time I'd been to the cinema for years, and I saw the film 1917. Have you seen that one? No, it's a very good film about the First World War, and it's made in a very unique style. If you get the opportunity to watch it, you should. It's a work of art, cinematically, a very good film. Okay, but that's enough about the cinema and films. So I went to school like everybody else, and probably like most boys, I didn't really like school. It was boring. It was boring, and I wasn't very bright. I wasn't very clever. But from a very early age, I had an ambition. Not a difficult ambition, but I wanted to join the Navy. I wanted to be a sailor. Yes, I really wanted to join the Navy. So much so that when I was 13, as soon as I was old enough, I became a Navy cadet and got a proper little Navy uniform. And we had, because I lived in Southampton, we had a very, very good cadet unit. We had rowing boats, we had motorboats, we had our own, how would you call it, motor fishing boat, but it was big enough for a dozen of us to sleep on. And we would go sailing, and we would go, in our motorboat, we would go to the Isle of Wight, which is a beautiful little island about 20 miles from Southampton. Here's an interesting bit of history. It was, the Isle of Wight was very popular with Tsar Nicholas II and Alexandra, because they would sail there in their yacht Standard. And why would they sail there? Because they would meet up with Queen Victoria, who of course was their grandmother. Yes, the grandmother of the royal family everywhere. And there's a beautiful palace on the Isle of Wight that's preserved that you can go and view. You can wander around this palace and see how Queen Victoria lived, because it was one of her. Well, of course, she had several palaces, but the Isle of Wight was one of her favourites. Yes, so we would go there. Looking back, we did all sorts of things that would be impossible now. Impossible because of laws and because of the way children, because we were children, the way children are treated, the way children are considered. For example, I applied to go on a course, a 2-week course in Scotland. Bearing in mind, I live in Southampton. Scotland is the top of Scotland, and it was the top of Scotland, is nearly 900 miles away. so at the age of 14, they gave me a railway ticket and said, there you are, you go to Scotland, and on this day, someone will collect you from the station. Yes, it was wonderful. What an adventure. Yes, that I took off dressed in my Sea Cadet Navy uniform, off to London, on the tube, and then catching the train. It seemed such a long way away. But it was fantastic. It was great. And it won't surprise you to hear that as soon as I was old enough, when I was 15, I joined the Navy. I joined the rear. I signed my life away and signed up for an initial period of 12 years. Yes, at 15. Once again, they don't do it that way anymore. But yes, so I joined the Navy. And I joined the aircraft branch, and it was my job to move aeroplanes around on the flight deck and things like that, looking after aeroplanes. Can you imagine? Can you imagine joining the Navy at 15? Can any of you imagine that? No, it was an extraordinary adventure. So after my training, my first posting was not to a ship, but to a Navy air station at Yeovilton, which then was the main Fleet Air Arm station, and it was when the Royal Navy had proper aeroplanes, jet fighters. They don't have them anymore. But yes, we had Phantoms, we had Scimitars. Yes, it was exciting. It was exciting, and I was attached to the fire station. At this point, I suppose I'm heading towards 17. Yes, I'm heading towards 17, and I would dress up in a fire suit, and I would man the fire engines, and in preparation for an aircraft crash. And then one day, one did. One crashed at night. And of course, that was very exciting. It crashed not on the airfield, just as it was approaching the airfield, burst into flames, and unfortunately, the two crew were killed. But I was there on my fire engine, shooting the foam, trying to put out the fire, but it burnt and burnt, because aircraft metals burn incredibly fiercely. So you can't, you don't fight an aircraft fire by putting water on it. Yes, that won't do any good at all. So you cover it in foam to try and smother the fire, and starve the fire of oxygen. But some of the metals are called monofuels, and they don't need oxygen. So this thing burnt all night, and most of the next day. And then eventually, when it was safe, now it would be considered child abuse. Now, when it was safe, the chief petty officer from the fire station said to me, right, go and get the crew. Okay, so at the age of 16, I was dealing with my first dead bodies. This is something I did, of course, a lot later when I was in the police, but that's something else. Yes, but it was exciting and something I'll never forget. So I was there for about 9 months, and then I had because of course I was in the Navy, they wanted to get me to sea. So I had my first posting to a ship. And the ship was in Singapore. So I had to fly. They put me on a Royal Air Force VC-10, which was an airliner of that era, and flew me out to Singapore to join my first ship. And of course, I do clearly remember getting there and thinking, I remember asking somebody, is it always this hot? And he said, yes. And I said, do you ever get used to it? And he said, no. It was very hot. It was very sticky. It was very sweaty. But I had 18 months on this ship, sailing around the Far East. We went to Australia, we went to Korea, we went to Japan, Hong Kong, lots of places, lots of exercises with the Australian Navy, with the American Navy, with the Korean Navy, the South Korean Navy, of course, and it was good. It was good fun. So I did 18 months on that ship, and then I came back to Britain, and I went through a series of different bases, and one other ship, which wasn't anywhere near as exciting because it just went up and down the North Atlantic. So Norway, Denmark, or Sweden, that up, just patrolling up and down the North Atlantic, all part of NATO forces, protecting the Baltic and Scandinavian countries from the nasty Russians, of course. That's what we were told. But no one actually believed that. It's very interesting. Well, we won't go there. But no one ever believed that the Russians were nasty. The Russians were nasty. No. It wasn't like that. People have asked me, "Oh, did you get lots of propaganda?" And no, we didn't. We really didn't. But anyway, by that time, I was married, and being married and being in the Navy can cause problems. Yes, long periods away, etc., etc. Being called away at short notice. So I left the Navy, and I joined the police. I joined the London police, and that was in 1977. I've got to say that after what was nearly 8 years in the Navy, joining the police was very nice, because the training establishment was very comfortable. I had my own room, which may not sound a great deal, but in the Navy you live in very close quarters. Often on a ship there can be 24 of you in one room, and you don't have very much room. Yes, you're living. There's an English expression, cheek by jowl. It means you're living in very close confines. And suddenly having my own room, with a desk and a table, and no computer, of course, it was before computers, it was absolute luxury. Great fun. And I enjoyed the training. I think it was 20 weeks, and we had smart uniforms, and we were quite well paid for trainees. If anybody has a question, because no one's saying anything. Yes? please, please. I mean, if you have any questions, just fire away.
Steve, I think that we usually leave the questions to the end. So you have to first tell us the story and then leave a couple of minutes for them to ask the questions. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a chaos. Okay, you know. So.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that they can actually hear me, and
yeah, everything is fine. Yes.
And that I'm not boring them. No?
No, it's fine. It's fine. But you make sure you leave some time for questions because I'm sure they will be.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. So I joined the police. The London police had lots of very exciting adventures whilst I was in the police. I'd always loved motorcycles. Yes, I still love motorcycles. I have a motorcycle in Britain, not in Russia, and it's one of the things I look forward to when I go back to Britain, is riding my motorbike. So, not surprisingly, I wanted to be a motorcycle cop, and I did that. Wonderful training to how to ride a police motorbike, and then of course how to drive police patrol cars. We had some very nice cars, very big, quite powerful, and the training was very thorough and long, and certainly not everyone passed. The failure rate was very high, but they taught you how to drive fast, but how to drive safely. Lots of pressure. Yeah, lots of pressure in that. And I worked at various traffic units, and including covering various motorways. You don't have motorways in Russia, but I'm sure you're aware of what a motorway is. Autobahn in Germany, autostrada in Italian. Yes. Big fast roads. Lots of which, when you have an accident, generally when you have an accident on the motorway, it's quite a big accident. We had some funny accidents, including one day a great big lorry loaded with champagne overturned on the motorway. And of course the motorway was covered in bottles of champagne, which we had to get rid of as quickly as possible, so that we could reopen the motorway. Well, one or two of the bottles found their way, to our. One or two of the bottles found their way to our back to our unit, and we took one. We all took a bottle home. We didn't drink it at work, of course. That would be absolutely forbidden. But we took a bottle of champagne home. Another funny incident was a lorry loaded with boxes of Spanish oranges that overturned, and the motorway was just covered in boxes of oranges. Okay, right. How can we get rid of these oranges? Start to clear the motorway to reopen it. And of course, by this time, because British motorways generally are busy, so the cars are queuing up. So we had the brilliant idea, right, each car in the queue gets a box of oranges. So we were opening the back door of the cars, just shoving a box of oranges, sometimes onto the lap of a very surprised passenger, and then saying, move, move, move. It worked. We did clear the motorway, and I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of vitamin C as a result of that. Other times, perhaps it's not so funny, but things like a truck carrying live sheep overturned, and there are sheep running all over the motorway, everywhere. How on earth do you deal with that? How do you deal with 200 sheep that are just, in a terrible panic, running everywhere? But we did. So, how about things like police dogs? Do you know about police dogs? Do you have police dogs in? Yes, police dogs in Russia. Yes. I wasn't a dog handler, but very often we'd call on the assistance of what we call a dog unit, because they have two very valuable qualities. One is the ability to track. Yes, they pick up a scent. They can pick up a scent and track a suspect, and hopefully catch them. Two, they scare people. They scare people. For example, numerous times we'd have a suspect that had gone into a yard or whatever. We chased them. They'd gone into a yard. Going into the yard in pursuit of them, why put yourself in that sort of danger? Yes, the idea is to surround the yard, contain it, and then put a dog in. And it's great to see how close the relationship between the dog handlers and the dogs are, because the dog will be not just the working tool of the dog handler, the dog will live with him. The dog goes home with him. The police construct a little house for him. They have a kennel, and of course the dog food is supplied, but the dog lives with the dog handler and is part of the family. So they have a very close relationship. But so much so that to climb over a wall, very often you'd see just the dog handler would simply bend down and the dog would jump on his back and then jump over the wall. And then generally, a few minutes later, we'd hear, "Get him off, get him off, get him off, okay, get him off." Yeah, it works. It works. They're jolly good, absolutely jolly good. And of course, we have police horses as well. Obviously, police horses can't track, but they're very, very, very good at controlling crowds. So we'd often use them at football matches. They can sort of gently shove people in the right direction. To learn to ride a police horse is a very long course. It's 18 weeks, I think. Yes, 18 weeks. And it's a career within itself. That's it. Likewise with a dog handler. Once you're a dog handler, once you're a mounted branch officer, you generally stay there for the rest of your career. Why would you want to do anything else? Yeah, so they're both very good jobs. But I was very, very happy in traffic as a traffic policeman. I was a sergeant, so I even had the luxury of saying, "Oh, it's raining. It's going to rain. I'll take a car. I'll have a car today." And "Oh, it's a nice day. I'll go out on my motorbike." Yeah, it was really good. And I spent altogether 27 years in the London police, and then I retired. Normally you retire at 30 years, but they added a little bit of my time in the Navy onto my pension. So I retired from the London police in 2003. Oh yes, the other thing, of course, we have dogs, we have horses, and we have a couple, or two helicopters, and they're very useful as well. Similar to dogs in that they can help pin down or locate suspects by using their infrared heat camera, and they have a fabulous what we call how would you call it? It's called a night sun, a very, very, very powerful lamp underneath. So it turns an area into broad daylight, which when you're chasing somebody is can be a big help, can be a very big help. Yeah, and once again, if somebody's hiding in a bush, the heat-seeking camera will pick them out. Will pick out their body heat. Very, very useful. So that yes, oh gosh, yes. Then I retired from the London Police, and I went to work for the Ministry of Defence. The Ministerium de Obranium, yes, something like that. Yes. I worked for the Ministry of Defence at a nuclear weapons establishment, which may sound quite exciting, but it wasn't. It's quite boring. Something that may appeal to some of you. We had lots and lots of guns. Yes. So we would regularly go to the range and shoot pistols, shoot rifles, shoot automatic carbines. Yeah. So it was always said that we were trained to shoot more than the army. We actually shot more rounds than the army, but we didn't do much else. The money was very good. I got to travel to Scotland quite often because we would take these nuclear products to the submarine base in Scotland, in the north of Scotland, in big trucks, and we would stay in hotels on the way up and on the way down, because we were classed as civil servants. We lived quite well on that basis, quite well, but it was all very tedious, really. And after 5 years, I'd had enough of that, and I left. And at the age of 55 and a half, I went to university. I went to university. I'd always had a complex, you see, because going back to the beginning, I joined the Navy when I was 15, so I didn't take examinations. I didn't have any qualifications at all, not one. So I always had a little bit of a complex about that. So I went to university at the age of 55, Exeter University, which is considered a good one, but and a part of my course was to spend an academic year in Russia. Yeah, you can see I'm coming to the point now. Yes. to spend an academic year in Russia. So I came to Russia, and I never really went back. Yes, I ended up staying. And of course, people ask me why. It's one of the most difficult questions I'm asked. It's a very easy question to ask, but very difficult to answer. People ask me, so why are you interested in Russia? I just am. I always have been. Even since childhood, for some reason. Yes. There we are. So you could say, I have a dream come true. Yes, that's a dream come true. So I'll end this part of the story then by issuing you a warning. Be careful what you wish for. It may come true.
All right, Steve, yes, thank you very much. Do you mind if I share the photo of you in the police uniform that you sent?
No.
So that guys can have an idea of what you look like, yes, and I think that there is a motorbike.
There's a motorcycle and the car, yes.
Okay, so can you guys see the photo?
That's it, yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So that is the photo from the police time, right?
It certainly is. Yes, it certainly is. And I was I was just under 50 there. I look so young. I look so young. I mean, but yes, nearly 50. Okay. It was just before I retired. Probably 6 months before I retired.
Okay, yeah. So I think that everybody, well, we really like our discussions after the story. Yes, so I'll stop this here. So, and as usual, guys, if you have a question, could you put a question mark or anything in the chat box, and then we'll organize a kind of line who will follow who with the questions. So today, Steve told us a very interesting and long story with a lot of details, like the story of your life, basically, yes, from almost
that's what you asked for.
I mean, it's really, it's interesting. So, any questions, guys? Eduard, yes, said that he has a question. Okay, go ahead.
How your parents reacted at your choice to go in Navy in 15?
Into the Navy. Yes. Yeah. How did my parents react?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good question, and it'll surprise you to learn that they were very supportive. They were very positive. Of course, because of my age, my parents had to co-sign. Yes, they had to give their written consent to me joining at such a young age. But they were very supportive. I think, looking back, I'd wanted to join the Navy since age 11, and I collected all sorts of literature and pictures of ships and things like that. And of course, something else, a lot of people weren't surprised because I came from Southampton. Our house was close to the docks. So from my bedroom window, I would look out and I would see these ships. I would see these ocean liners. We were so close that we could actually see people on the deck. So I'd grown up looking at ships. So it wasn't too much of a surprise. It wasn't too much of a surprise. My parents were very positive, very encouraging. Now, of course, it's impossible. But if I had a 15-year-old son and he wanted to join the Navy, which is not, I would be a little bit more cautious. I would be very cautious now, very.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions, Steve. So
yes. Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Eduard, did it answer your question? I think that it did, actually.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Yeah. So Dima, I didn't quite catch. So you don't have a question, no? Then Nikita.
Hello.
Nikita.
Yeah. Was something unusual for you when you went to Russia? Some kind of.
Sorry, what was unusual?
Unusual.
What's unusual in Russia? This is a big question.
Not usual, something strange, maybe some kind of.
What's different? Okay,
yeah.
That's what's different in Russia. What's different? Okay, shall we just confine it to people? Otherwise, I could go on for a long time.
No, let me rephrase my question. So, was something weird for you when you went to Russia?
Oh, was it weird?
Yeah.
Okay, some things were weird.
Uh-huh.
I'll admit, some things were weird. They've all gone now, but when I first came here in 2010, at every bus stop had an alcohol kiosk. Now, yes. Now, consider that really weird, that people could have a bottle of beer whilst they waited for the bus. Yes. And of course, they all disappeared. But yes, we all considered that very strange. The other thing, perhaps, is British people tend to smile a lot more. And we smile at people we don't know, yes, which is not Russian at all. So if you, for example, where I live, which is quite sort of middle class, if you're walking down the pavement and somebody's coming the other way, you'll probably say hello or good morning and smile at them, and that's considered completely normal. If you do that here, people think that you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a little weird, but nothing really seriously disturbing. Put it that way. No. So, but if we're going to talk about what's different, then that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I understand.
Go on a very long time.
So maybe we can invite Steve you once again, and then you can tell us more.
Talk about what's different.
Yes.
Okay. And there are a lot of things that are different.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
So Nastya had a question. Nastya, go ahead.
What was the most difficult in your job?
Pardon, the speaker on my laptop is not so good. Elena, could you repeat the question?
So what was the most difficult thing in your job? In the police job, right, Nastya? Do you mean police job?
Yes.
In your police job. In your job, what was the most difficult? Yes, Nastya.
I think everybody would agree that one of them, perhaps the most difficult part of being a policeman or police officer is when you turn up at somebody's house, knock on the door, and tell them that their husband or their wife is dead. Because you never know what sort of reaction you're going to get. You never know. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes you get the strangest reaction. And I'll illustrate that because once again, it's a little, I'll never forget it. So what the received wisdom, what you generally do is you go in and you comfort the person and you say, look, sit down, I'll go into your kitchen, I'll put the kettle on, I'll make you a cup of tea. That's very British. Yes, I'll make you a cup of tea and you stay with them for a little while, but you comfort them. Yeah, you'd agree that's logical. That's what you'd expect to do. But I remember once knocking on the door to tell a woman that a husband had been killed that morning in a motorway accident. And she said to me, oh, how awful, how terrible, how awful for you to have to come and tell me that. It's terrible for you. It's terrible that you have to do this. Come in. She said, come in, sit down. She said, you sit down, I'll go into the kitchen and I'll make you a cup of tea. And yes, and that was her way of dealing with it. But I only had that response the once. And something else I remember about that particular incident, on her mantelpiece, there were two pictures of a paratrooper, a soldier, a British soldier in battle, and one of them was him being presented with something, and it was her husband who'd been a paratrooper in the war and at the Battle of Arnhem. And what he was being presented with was he was being made an officer in the battle because all the officers had been killed. So he was being given a battlefield commission. The photographs were very clear, and it just made me think, gosh, even in the Khan, and it was a terrible battle. One of the worst battles for British soldiers in the Second World War. But how very British that they found time to photograph him. Yes, in that they photographed him, and they were very good photographs. And I thought, gosh, it makes you realize. What it makes you realize is that life is precious, and don't ever take it for granted, because it can be snatched away so easily. That's
okay. Thank you very much. So Julia has got a question.
Yes, I like your speech.
Oh, hello, I can see you.
Yes, I love your speech very much. And what did you like in sailing?
Pardon? What?
Could you repeat, Julia, again?
Like in sailing.
What, life at sea?
What did you like in the Navy, you mean, like?
Yeah.
In the Navy. So you mean when he decided to join? Or
What did I like about, yes? Why did I want to join the Navy?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now, of course, the world is very different. And if you want to go somewhere, you can simply book a flight, can't you? Yes, and you can go to a budget airline. And if you want to go to America, you have to get a visa, but you can get a flight, or you can go around the world. It wasn't so easy then. And, of course, there were airlines, but they cost a great deal of money. And so the Navy was an opportunity for travel. And of course, certain boys, and I was one, like the discipline, we liked the uniform, we liked the structure, and of course I thought it would be exciting. It was better than working in a supermarket, perhaps. And one thing I will say is that, I had all sorts of experiences that I wouldn't otherwise have had. And I met all sorts of people and had the opportunity at a very young age to work with, as I mentioned, with the Australian Navy, with American Navy. mix with these people from different countries, and see some wonderful sights. No, there's no denying that. For example, not too far away from Norway. Yes, I remember sailing up the fjords in Norway. Absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely and a view that you would only get from the sea. And of course, I know other things that are more, dolphins and things like, not in Norway, of course, but in, when we were in the Far East. Exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's quite a good way to travel, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And a career. Of course, I could have stayed in for 22 years, but I decided otherwise.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that the final question for today, because
just one thing. So one thing I will add. Yeah, one thing I will add is that what did I like about the Navy? One thing I did like was the food. we were very well fed, to the point in the 1970s it was becoming a problem that we were all getting fat. Yes, for example, on our ship we had one chef whose sole job it was to make ice cream. So you only had a dessert with lunch, but each you would have a choice of about 4 different desserts. Yes, and one of them would be ice cream, and each day you would have a different flavor of ice cream. Yeah, we most certainly didn't go hungry. Yeah.
Okay. So, and Dima had a question. Yeah.
Have you ever shot a pistol?
Hello, Dima.
Can you repeat again?
Have you ever shot a pistol?
Was I ever?
Shot a pistol.
Have I ever shot a pistol?
Yes.
Oh, of course, yes. When I was with the yes, yeah, we had pistols, and yes, with the Ministry of Defense, yes, we had our own pistols, and yes, rifles and carbines, and yes, we shoot all the time. Have I ever? Of course, we never actually shot anybody, but we were shooting at the targets, and we had to qualify every quarter, I think. No, every 3 months. Yeah, every quarter. Every quarter we had to qualify. We had to get a certain score on the range, and if you didn't get the score, then you would get additional shooting training, and it wasn't difficult. I always got. I'm not boasting, but I had a reputation as being a good shot.
Okay.
But, yes.
Okay. I think that maybe we're going to finish here. It was really interesting. A lot of information. So maybe, guys, I have a suggestion to make, because you all had, Steve had such an interesting story. Then you had so many questions, and if you still want to, for example, ask him about his impressions of Russia, or how it feels to live in Russia, if you are interested in that, I think that we can organize it and invite Steve once again, and then have a different session, maybe on dedicated to your life in Russia. Steve, how about that?
Yes.
For example, yes.
That would be a long topic too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
we could I think that if there is interest, and if you are available, then why not? We can organize it on.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a taster on that. Of course, long before I came to Russia, I went to Belarus. Yes, and whilst I was in Belarus, I was taken into the Chernobyl exclusion zone and spent a whole morning with a scientist in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So that was very interesting. And if I do come back, if you do want me to come back and talk about Russia, I'll start with that.
I think that we would, guys. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, we would. It was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope. Two things. I hope I didn't speak too quickly for everybody.
No,
It was fun.
No?
it was okay. Thank you.
And I hope I didn't talk a little too much.
It was very interesting. You have a lot of interesting things to share, so it was great. Yeah, so you guys can start thinking about the questions to ask Steve next time he comes, and when you see that, because we have a lineup of speakers, you know,
of course,
for
yeah.
the nearest Sundays. So at some point when you see that Steve is coming back, then you are welcome with your questions. So thank you very much.
Oh, gosh, yes, so there we are, 9 o'clock, so that's the whole hour.
Yeah, the whole hour, yes. So next time, Steve, I hope that we will be able to see you. So you also have a homework to do, so somehow to organize, you know, the camera. And
yes.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next Sunday.
Of course, and I enjoyed meeting so many people. And it's the very first time I've used Zoom, of course. So you'll have to excuse my lack of technical knowledge.
It takes practice, but rest assured, we'll teach you. So the more you join our project, the more proficient you become. So that could be a motivation.
Yeah,
all right, so thank you very much, Steve, and thank you everyone, and see you next Sunday.
Thank you all. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Steven.
Bye.
Bye.